The movie opens with a man named Paul marrying his beloved girlfriend, Sophia. Everything feels dreamlike and beautiful, and Paul takes us back through a flashback to show us where it all started. We learn that the movie is set in the 1990s, where Sophia is a famous singer, and Paul is her obsessed #1 fan. One evening, he arrives at Sophia's mansion, dressed elegantly and clutching a rose. Her bodyguard, Belle, appears to be frustrated, and it is revealed that this isn't the first time Paul has pulled something like this. A delusional Paul insists that Sophia is his girlfriend, but Belle orders him to leave the property and threatens to call the cops. Upon hearing this, Paul apologizes and finally starts to leave, prompting Belle to head back inside. But moments later, the doorbell rings again, and when Belle opens it, he's stunned to see Paul standing there with a knife pressed to his own throat, threatening to end his life. Belle tries to defuse the situation, but Paul, slipping deeper into madness, mistakes him for Sophia. He pulls out an imaginary ring and proposes to the confused bodyguard, so Belle has no choice but to play along and accept the proposal. Overjoyed, Paul starts rambling about wedding plans and moves to hug Belle. But in an unexpected turn, after stabbing the bodyguard, Paul leaves the man bleeding and excitedly enters the mansion. Sophia isn't home, but Paul doesn't seem to care. He roams through her studio, plays her piano, and indulges in her bathtub, having the time of his life. Meanwhile, Belle lies outside in critical condition, until he finally loses consciousness, just as distant police sirens begin to wail through the night. The scene then cuts to 6 months later, where Sophia is at her mansion, relaxing with her casual fling, Rhodes, a famous basketball player. She is soon called by her assistant, Kaylor, who reveals that Belle has just arrived at the mansion. It turns out he has recovered from his injuries and will resume his role as her bodyguard, and Sophia rushes to hug him, revealing the sweet bond they share. In the following scene, we see a burly man named JH, and Paul's voice is heard in a voiceover. He is asking JH to pick up his parcel from the post office and prepare for their next move. Paul seems excited and thanks JH for being part of the great journey that he and Sophia are about to embark on. In the evening, Sophia and Rhodes arrive at a lively pub, where they dance and revel in the carefree atmosphere. Meanwhile, Belle is at home when he learns from the news that Paul has escaped the mental facility, along with another patient, Penny. Worried, he leaves his daughter, Abby, in the care of Aunt Eleanor, and urgently heads to Sophia's mansion. Elsewhere, an excited Paul meets up with JH. Alongside him is the equally unhinged Penny, whom he introduces as his assistant. Meanwhile, Sophia returns home at Belle's urgent request, only to be shocked by the sight of cops in her mansion. Belle informs her that Paul escaped the facility 2 hours ago. On the other hand, the deranged trio can be seen driving through the night, with Penny noticing JH's one weird eye, so Paul reveals he had a parasitic infection. The trio then stops at an old man's house, where Penny knocks on the door. She claims her car is broken and asks to use the phone, so the kind man offers to check her car, and we see Penny's sinister smile. The scene then cuts to Eleanor, going about her chores, and when she looks outside, she is horrified to see JH. Belle immediately receives a call from her and urges her to call the cops. He then asks Rhodes to lock the doors of the mansion before rushing off to protect his family. Not long after, Eleanor is visited by a goofy police officer. She nervously recounts the strange man who had been lurking outside, but the officer dismisses her concerns. He assures her that everything is fine and attempts to leave, as he has an audition for a musical tomorrow. But Eleanor refuses to let him leave and forces him to stay outside and keep watch for their safety. Back at the mansion, a security guard monitors the CCTV cameras and is surprised to spot a large trunk outside. He goes to investigate, but at that very moment, the lights go out, plunging the entire mansion into darkness, so the guard quickly heads back to his room. Inside, Sophia lights candles to illuminate the place, and a worried Rhodes asks her where the circuit panel is. But the dumb singer doesn't know, so he grabs the candles and decides to head out alone to find it himself. Meanwhile, in the monitor room, the guard is searching for some tools when Penny suddenly appears behind him. The insane girl then grabs a flashlight and begins choking him, but he fights back, managing to briefly turn the tables. After a furious battle, Penny eventually gains the upper hand and finishes him off with a microwave. Next, Sophia, who is now alone in the mansion, hurriedly locks every door and window. She lights a candle, and we notice a figure silently standing behind her. Meanwhile, Rhodes manages to find the power circuit, and the mansion is flooded with light once more. And Paul immediately appears behind Sophia and hugs her. He apologizes for abandoning her for so long. But a panicked Sophia shoves him away and begins hitting him with objects around the kitchen. Rhodes, still in the garage, hears the noises. Sophia then rushes to the front door, and Rhodes arrives at the other side, but she is unable to reach the latch by a few inches. Unfortunately, Paul slams her into the glass, knocking her unconscious, while Rhodes watches helplessly from the other side. Elsewhere, Belle finally returns home, but doesn't notice the police officer who was supposed to keep watch. He quickly urges his family to pack their bags, insisting they need to head to the police station. The scene then flashes back 1 minute earlier, where we see the officer outside, rehearsing for his musical audition. Suddenly, he notices someone has stolen a chain on his bicycle, right when we see JH sneaks up behind him. He strangles the officer with the chain and lands a few brutal punches, silencing him forever. He then drags the body from there and hides it nearby. In the present, Belle and his family enter the car, only to find JH already waiting for them. He points his gun straight at Belle, and forces him to hand over the weapon before ordering him to drive towards Sophia's mansion. Sometime later, Sophia regains consciousness and finds herself locked in her recording booth with Paul sitting in front of her. He excitedly begins talking about their upcoming wedding. Sophia tries to reason with him, revealing that he's deeply traumatized. It turns out that the man lost his girlfriend at one of Sophia's concerts, which drove him insane. But Paul is unwilling to confront the truth and shuts down Sophia, leaving her frustrated. Elsewhere, a desperate Belle pleads with JH, asking him to let his family go and handle the situation with him instead. But this only annoys the big man, who suddenly orders the car to be stopped. JH then leads Belle a few meters away and makes him kneel on the side of the road, after which he shoots him ruthlessly. There's loud music blaring in the car, so Belle's family doesn't hear the gunshot, while JH returns to the vehicle and forces Eleanor to continue driving to Sophia's mansion. Elsewhere, Paul excitedly introduces Sophia to Penny, claiming that she also sings and plays piano, just like her. He leaves the two women alone to get along, before heading to prepare for the wedding. Paul dresses in an elegant suit and opens a package to reveal a fancy dagger. With a sinister smile, he walks downstairs and eagerly greets Eleanor and Abby, who are being forced to be the wedding guests. On the other hand, Penny shows Sophia the wedding dress and compliments her body and skin. But she also expresses her disappointment, as she thought the singer would be more beautiful. Sophia seizes the opportunity and asks the psycho girl to bring her makeup bag from the bathroom, as it will fix her face, so Penny eagerly goes to fetch it. Following this, Sophia exits the recording booth and grabs a guitar. She hides behind the door, ready to strike when Penny returns, but when she launches the attack, she is taken aback to see it is Rhodes who has collapsed unconscious. In the living room, Paul excitedly tells Abby that he wants her to be the flower girl, and JH has already picked out a dress for her. But the little girl is curious about the noise coming from the trunk and asks if someone is inside. Paul gives her permission to open it, and to her shock, the trunk reveals the old man from earlier, the one Penny had asked for help and then attacked. He turns out to be a priest whom Paul kidnapped to officiate his twisted wedding to Sophia. On the other hand, Sophia manages to wake Rhodes and apologizes for hitting him. But before they can say more, Penny and Sophia engage in a fierce struggle when she ends up hitting a piano. The crazy girl then begins to play and even invites Sophia for a duet, leaving the latter confused. Penny sings with such an angelic voice that it captivates Sophia, who can't help but join her in song. Meanwhile, Rhodes regains consciousness and is confused at what the hell is happening. But moments later, Penny suddenly stops the performance and hits Sophia for singing flat. She throws both of them onto the balcony. They continue fighting again, during which Penny sprays Sophia with flammable liquid and tries to burn her with a matchstick. But before she can do so, Sophia attacks her with a sharp object and takes the chance to pour the flammable liquid on her. She lights her lighter, and the psycho woman also urges her to go ahead and burn her, but Sophia, being a normal person, can't bring herself to kill someone. Next, Sophia checks on Rhodes and tries to call the cops, but Penny suddenly reappears and attacks her. The two get into a fight again, which ends with the injured Penny getting shoved inside the recording booth. This time, Sophia shows no remorse. She lights a piece of paper and tosses it through the small booth window. Within seconds, Penny is engulfed in flames, while Sophia watches the scene unfold in horror. She soon feels guilty and tries to help by using the fire extinguisher, but it's too late, as Penny is already burned to a crisp. In the living room, the priest tries to reason with Paul, insisting he's delusional and that none of this is real. But Paul refuses to believe it and heads upstairs to check on Sophia. Elsewhere, Sophia is tending to Rhodes, who weakly reveals that he saw a little girl earlier when he snuck in. This worries her, so she leaves him alone for a moment to find this child. Sometime later, Paul arrives looking for Sophia, but instead comes face to face with Rhodes. In his delusional state, he mistakes the basketball player for Sophia and begins complimenting him. Paul also pulls out his fancy dagger and proudly talks about its significance. As Rhodes stares in disbelief, Paul suddenly kisses him, leaving the poor man confused. Meanwhile, Sophia is in the living room and anxiously asks Abby where her dad is. In a flashback, it is revealed that J.H., who was one-eyed, was unsure whether the bodyguard was actually dead or alive. The movie then cuts to the next morning, when Kaylor finds Belle lying on the side of the road and wakes him up. Turns out that the bullet simply grazed his head and he's still alive, so he takes Kaylor's car and immediately drives toward the mansion. Upon arrival, he notices the mansion is in chaos and no one is in sight. Belle stumbles upon a wedding invitation and realizes they've already left. In the next scene, everyone is at the church preparing for the wedding. Belle is also on his way there and urgently calls the cops. Inside the church, Sophia is ready to marry the psycho out of fear. But Paul, in his delusional state, mistakes her for someone else and asks her to take a seat before his bride arrives. Soon, the ceremony begins, where Abby makes her entrance as the flower girl and scatters imaginary flowers. But the room falls into stunned silence moments later when Rhodes appears, wearing the damn wedding dress. At this moment, Belle also arrives, so he takes Rhodes' hand and walks him down the aisle. After leaving Rhodes at the altar, Belle goes to greet the guests and suddenly slips a knife into Sophia's hand. As the priest begins the ceremony, J.H. interrupts and informs Paul that his bride is a black man, not Sophia. However, Paul doesn't listen to his friend and asks him to shut up. Next, the priest officiates the wedding, announcing the two as husband and wife. An excited Paul then kisses Rhodes, and we flash back to the opening scene where he was seen marrying Sophia. It becomes clear that all of this was only in his mind because, in reality, Rhodes stands before him. After kissing for a good while, Paul suddenly snaps and drives his dagger into Rhodes' abdomen, causing him to collapse to the ground. Everyone gasps in horror, but Belle seizes the opportunity to knock Paul to the ground. Up next, Belle shoves J.H.'s face into the water as Paul watches the chaos unfold. Moments later, Sophia steps toward him and seizes his dagger. This is when Paul finally recognizes her and stammers out an apology, but Sophia delivers a sharp kick to his face. All of a sudden, J.H. grabs Abby and presses a gun to her head. He angrily demands Belle drop the dagger and pass it to him. The scared father obliges and pleads for J.H. to release his daughter. But just when it seems all hope is lost,
oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
an injured Rhodes slashes J.H.'s throat, killing the big man. Meanwhile, Paul is still lost in his delusions, as he envisions himself and Sophia blissfully walking away from the church's newlyweds. In the aftermath, the authorities finally arrive at the church. Sophia asks Rhodes if he wants to give their relationship a chance, but he jokingly says it's impossible because he's a married man now. Elsewhere, Bell reveals to Abby that he's decided to leave his bodyguard job, realizing it's too dangerous for anyone close to him. In the final scene, Paul is escorted away in a police car, but in his delusional state, he believes he's in a limousine. He happily continues chatting about honeymoon plans and requests to be dropped at the Hilton. But the illusion is quickly shattered, and the movie ends as Paul is consumed by the weight of his actions and breaks down in tears. Thus, we reach the end of this movie. Thanks for watching. If you like the movie, support us. Don't forget to subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next movie. Goodbye.